Ava Delgado had always prided herself on maintaining grace under pressure. Balancing 2 jobs to support her ailing mother, she wore her tired smile like armor. But one fateful afternoon at the Redwood Cafe changed everything. When an arrogant millionaire named Richard Barrow burst through the doors, his designer shoes tapping on the polished floor. He had no idea the humble waitress pouring his coffee was about to turn his entire worldview upside down. In one heated moment after a single spill, he unleashed a torrent of humiliation upon her, oblivious that Ava's next move would leave everyone stunned and spark a wave of ripples he never could have anticipated. Ava Delgado's day started as usual. She woke before dawn in her tiny studio apartment in Los Angeles, struggling to ignore the mattress spring poking into her back. Her mother Isabella slept in the adjacent room, her breathing labored from a persistent respiratory illness. Ava had long accepted that her life was dictated by hospital schedules, oxygen tanks, and the tyranny of medical bills. At 5:30 a.m., she caught the first bus to the Redwood Cafe, a decades-old establishment in downtown LA that specialized in strong coffee and hearty breakfasts. The cafe stood across the street from the sweeping glass headquarters of Brio Vision Enterprises, a building owned by billionaire Richard Barrow, though Ava only knew his name from the occasional headlines. Ava's manager, a kindly older man named Sergio Morales, greeted her with a sympathetic smile when she arrived. "Long night, Ava?" he asked, noticing the shadows under her eyes. She smiled ruefully. "Same as always, Sergio." "I'll be fine." Shaking her head, Ava tied on her apron and went through the opening routine, wiping counters, brewing the first pot of coffee, and arranging pastries in the display case. The Redwood Cafe was old-fashioned with checkered floors, red vinyl booths, and staff who knew every regular by name. It was a far cry from the sleek, modern coffee shops that dominated the city. But that was exactly why Ava liked it. By 7 a.m., the cafe buzzed with its usual morning rush. Lawyers on their way to the courthouse, tech employees from Brio Vision, and a few bleary-eyed tourists waiting for the downtown museum to open, all filtered in for their morning dose of caffeine. Ava moved swiftly between tables, balancing orders, offering a kind word here and a cheerful nod there. It was around 8 o'clock when Richard Barrow walked in. Ava didn't recognize him at first, just another businessman in a tailored suit. His posture exuded impatience, as though stepping into a humble cafe were beneath him. He slid into a booth, removed a pair of expensive-looking sunglasses, and snapped his fingers at Ava the moment her eyes drifted in his direction. She felt a stab of annoyance. She disliked customers who treated waitstaff like servants. Still, she forced a polite smile and approached with her notepad. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "What can I get for you today?" He didn't glance up from his phone. "Double espresso. Make it quick, and keep it hot." Ava resisted rolling her eyes. "Of course, sir." As she turned to prepare the drink, she wondered if he might be one of those big-shot executives who occasionally stopped by. She had no clue he was the actual owner of the tower across the street, or that she'd soon discover his name was known well beyond LA for his ruthless business dealings. For now, though, he was just another demanding customer. She poured his espresso carefully, determined to maintain her usual grace. Little did she know, in a matter of minutes, her entire life's trajectory would spin on a single spilled drop. Ava placed the steaming espresso on the tray and headed toward the corner booth where the man sat. He was still glued to his phone, brow furrowed as if the world around him was more of a bother than a place to live in. She approached with caution, determined not to let his attitude rattle her. Customers came in all moods, and it was part of her job to handle them with poise. She gently set the white porcelain cup on the table, ensuring it was within easy reach, but not precariously placed near the edge. "Your double espresso, sir," she said in a steady tone. Without bothering to look up, he muttered, "Finally." Ava suppressed a sigh. "Anything else I can get you?" He dismissed her with a wave of his hand, still scrolling on his phone. Typically, Ava might have left at that point, but some instinct made her linger. Maybe it was the gnawing feeling that the day was about to take a turn. He exhaled sharply. "Well, do you plan on standing there all day?" Annoyed, Ava turned to leave. But in that exact moment, a bus rumbled by outside, rattling the cafe's windows and shaking the floor. The tray in her hand wobbled just enough to knock the side of the espresso cup. A sudden jerk caused a small gush of piping hot coffee to spill onto the table and splatter onto the man's pristine grey suit. Time seemed to freeze. Ava stared horrified at the dark stain seeping across his expensive fabric. She fumbled for napkins, her heart hammering in her chest. I'm so sorry, sir," Ava stammered, attempting to blot the stain. "I didn't mean—" His reaction was instantaneous and volcanic. Rage contorted his features as he stood pushing past her attempts to mop up the coffee. "Are you incompetent?" he snarled, the veins on his neck standing out. "This suit cost more than you make in a month, probably a year. How dare you?" Heat flooded Ava's cheeks, and the entire cafe went quiet. Other customers turned in their seats, watching the unfolding drama with a mixture of shock and sympathy. Sergio, stationed behind the counter, looked ready to intervene. Ava swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "Sir, it was an accident. Let me pay for dry cleaning." "Dry cleaning?" he snapped, face twisted in disgust. "This is bespoke. You think a lowly waitress like you can even afford the cost of the damage? I doubt you have more than a few dollars to your name." Tears pricked the corners of Ava's eyes. She'd endured rude customers before, but the venom in his words was cutting deep. She glanced around helplessly, seeing pity and fear on her co-workers' faces. The man tore off a handful of napkins, flinging them onto the table. "You're lucky I don't sue this place for hiring incompetent staff." At that moment, Sergio approached, face grim. "Sir, I'm sorry for this inconvenience. Let me comp your meal and—" "Shut up," the man spat. "You think free coffee covers this? I'll make sure your manager hears about this, and the owner too. You'll regret hiring this clumsy fool fury and humiliation ward within Ava." As the man ranted, she felt a sharp tug in her chest, the raw ache of being powerless. Still, she stood rigidly, refusing to cower entirely. Something was about to give, she could feel it. And in that instant, she decided she'd had enough of being kicked around by life. Her reaction would soon ripple far beyond the Redwood Cafe, leaving the arrogant millionaire and everyone else utterly stunned. The cafe buzzed with aftershock long after Richard Barrow stormed out, still fuming, his suit jacket soaked in espresso. Sergio ushered Ava into the back room, handing her a glass of water to calm her trembling hands. "Ava." "It's all right," Sergio said, softly, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Accidents happen. You can't let people like him get to you." Ava nodded, though tears still clung to her lashes. "He was so vicious," she whispered. "I've never been spoken to like that before." Sergio sighed. "He's just another self-important man with more money than manners. Don't worry, I won't let anyone blame you for this. But keep your head low, okay? These types can cause trouble if they want." She took a shaky breath and forced a small smile. Thanks, Sergio. Over the next few hours, Ava tried to focus on her work, but the humiliation and anger gnawed at her. The Redwood Cafe's usual warmth felt tainted by the memory of Richard's contempt. She replayed his words in her head. You think a lowly waitress like you can afford it? By the end of her shift, Ava felt physically and emotionally drained. She left through the back door, wanting to avoid the front street where the Brio Vision skyscraper loomed. The last thing she wanted was another sighting of that man. At home, Ava found her mother resting on the couch, magazines scattered around. Isabella looked up with tired eyes. You're late, mija. Everything okay? Ava tried to smile, shrugging off her coat. Just a rough day at the cafe. She sank beside her mother, gently massaging Isabella's shoulders. How are you feeling? Isabella gave a half smile. A bit better. The new medication seems to be helping. Ava's heart squeezed with guilt. The new medication was expensive. She was already behind on rent, and the cafe job could barely cover monthly bills, let alone any emergencies. She'd taken on side gigs whenever possible, from babysitting to waitressing private events, but money always seemed to vanish the moment it arrived. As she prepared dinner, a simple meal of rice and beans, Ava's mind drifted to the vicious tirade from that morning. She wasn't just a powerless waitress. She was a caretaker, a fighter. She had dreams she'd kept buried, like maybe going back to college or starting her own small business. She was more than the sum of that humiliating moment. Despite the tired ache in her limbs, a spark of defiance ignited within Ava. The way Richard Barrow had dismissed her as though her entire existence was worthless rankled her to the core. She knew it shouldn't matter what some arrogant billionaire thought, but a voice in her head insisted otherwise. What if I prove him wrong, she thought. What if I show him and everyone that I'm not just a lowly waitress? That night, as Isabella drifted off to sleep, Ava stayed awake, restless. The city lights flickered through her thin curtains. She felt the strangest surge of resolve building inside her. Something was about to change in her life, she could sense it. And the spilled coffee incident, as humiliating as it was, might just be the catalyst she needed to set a daring plan in motion. A week crawled by, and each day Ava half expected to find a furious letter or a summons demanding compensation for Richard Barrow's ruined suit. But nothing came, no complaint, no lawsuit, no apology. It was as if the entire ugly episode had vanished into thin air. Still, the memory stuck to her like burrs. While Ava served tables at the Redwood Cafe, she noticed Brio Vision employees passing by in sleek suits, sometimes darting in for takeout coffee. She never saw Barrow again, and a part of her was relieved, but another part was strangely disappointed. She couldn't shake the feeling there was unfinished business. On a crisp Monday morning, as Ava was wiping down tables before the breakfast rush, a well-dressed woman entered the cafe. She had a commanding presence with her hair pulled into a tight bun and a briefcase at her side. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on Ava. Miss Delgado. The woman asked, her tone polite but firm. Ava's stomach clenched. Yes. The woman extended a business card. My name is Celeste Monroe. I'm an attorney representing Brio Vision Enterprises. Heart pounding. Ava glanced at the card. She braced for the worst. Maybe Richard Barrow had decided to sue after all. How can I help you? Celeste offered a tight smile. Mr. Barrow would like to speak with you. We can discuss the details in private if you have a moment. Ava felt Sergio's eyes on her from behind the counter. She swallowed, forcing her voice to remain steady. I'm working right now, but I can take a short break. Let's talk in the corner booth. They sat across from each other. The booth was ironically the same one Richard Barrow had occupied days ago. The memory of spilled coffee set Ava's heart racing. Mr. Barrow has arranged a meeting this afternoon in his office, Celeste explained, removing a folder from her briefcase. He would appreciate your presence at 2 p.m. Ava's palms dampened. Why does he want to see me? Celeste pressed her lips into a thin line, as if carefully measuring her words. He didn't specify the details, only that it concerns a business opportunity. Rest assured, there are no legal claims against you. This is something else. Confusion swirled in Ava's mind. A business opportunity. From the same man who practically spat on her for spilling coffee. She glanced at Sergio, who looked just as perplexed. I don't understand, Ava said slowly. I'm just a waitress. Why would he want to talk business with me? Celeste's expression softened slightly. Mr. Barrow can be unpredictable, but he can also be quite generous when motivated. I can only encourage you to attend. Ava felt as though she was teetering on the edge of a cliff. Part of her wanted to refuse outright. She had no desire to face Barrow's scorn again. But another part remembered her mother's mounting medical bills. If there was even a slim chance this opportunity could help, wasn't it worth exploring? After a pause, she nodded. All right, I'll be there. Celeste stood, offering her hand. Excellent. Here are the details. She slid a piece of paper with the address of Brio Vision's headquarters, then walked out, leaving Ava's mind a whirl. What do you think Sergio whispered, hurrying over? I think I just accepted an invitation into the lion's den. Ava murmured, eyes fixed on the exit. As the morning rush began, Ava forced a professional smile for the customers. Yet beneath her calm facade, anxiety buzzed like an electric current. Little did she know that the invitation from Richard Barrow was only the tip of an iceberg that would upend her life and challenge everything she believed about herself. By early afternoon, Ava found herself standing outside Brio Vision's gleaming high-rise. The sun reflected off the towering glass structure, momentarily dazzling her. She clutched a small purse with sweaty palms, wearing a modest but tidy blouse and skirt, her best attempt at looking professional on a budget. The lobby inside was equally impressive. Polished marble floors stretched out before her, and a colossal abstract sculpture dominated the space. Rows of potted palms lined the walls, giving the area a touch of greenery. A uniformed security guard sat behind a curved reception desk. Miss Delgado, he asked with a polite nod. She nodded, trying not to show her nerves. Yes, I have a 2 p.m. appointment. He motioned toward an elevator bank. 34th floor. Ms. Monroe will meet you there. The ride up felt interminable, each ding of passing floors heightening her tension. Finally, the doors slid open to reveal a spacious corridor adorned with modern art. Celeste Monroe stood waiting, greeting Ava with that same clipped smile. This way, please, Celeste said, leading her down the corridor to a pair of frosted glass doors bearing the words Richard Barrow, CEO. A surge of apprehension gripped Ava, but she followed Celeste inside. The office beyond was a testament to power and wealth, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown LA. A massive mahogany desk and plush leather seating. Richard Barrow stood by the window wearing a tailored navy suit. He turned as they entered, his expression unreadable. Gone was the rage Ava had witnessed at the cafe. He looked every bit the composed titan of industry. Thank you, Celeste, he said dismissively. The attorney nodded and exited, shutting the door behind her. Ava swallowed hard, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "You asked to see me." Richard stepped forward. "Yes. Thank you for coming." She caught the faintest whiff of expensive cologne and recalled how just a week ago he'd been raging about his ruined suit. Now she wondered if he'd drag her through some elaborate lecture. "I'll get straight to the point," he said, crossing his arms. "I owe you an apology for my behavior at the cafe." Ava blinked, stunned by the admission. Apology was the last thing she'd expected. Richard exhaled slowly. "I was out of line. It's no excuse, but I was under considerable stress. Major business deals, legal issues, personal problems. When you spilled coffee on me, I took it out on you." Ava tried to read his expression. He seemed genuinely contrite, which was unsettling. "I appreciate that," she said, softly. "But I still don't understand why I'm here." He gestured for her to sit in one of the leather chairs near a glass coffee table. He settled across from her, unbuttoning his suit jacket. "I won't beat around the bush. I saw something in you that day, a fierce dignity despite your position. And it made me realize I've become someone I'm not proud of." Ava bit her lip, recalling his scathing insults. "I'm not sure what you mean." He leaned forward, lacing his fingers. "I've decided to fund a personal project, something philanthropic. A program that helps hard-working individuals like yourself pursue higher education or entrepreneurial goals. I want you to be the first beneficiary." Ava's jaw dropped, a flurry of questions firing off in her mind. Was this a trap? A publicity stunt? Did he truly intend to help her, or was he assuaging his guilt? Sensing her hesitation, Richard added, "I'm prepared to cover your mother's medical expenses and finance whatever dream you have within reason. You'd be free to choose how to use the funds provided we create a structured plan." Heart pounding. Ava's thoughts spun. She imagined her mother's relief at receiving top-tier medical care, her own longing to return to college or start a small bakery. But a gnawing suspicion remained. Why me? Why now? She cleared her throat. "I'd need to think this over." Richard nodded. "Of course, take your time. This is genuine, no strings attached, except transparency. If you accept, I want to document your journey as part of a philanthropic initiative. We could inspire others to do the same." Ava's eyes flickered with uncertainty. A philanthropic initiative. Being documented. It felt surreal, yet the chance to transform her life and help her mother was too significant to dismiss. Her mind whirled with conflicting thoughts, but she managed a careful nod. "I'll consider your offer." As she rose to leave, Richard's expression softened. "Thank you for hearing me out. Celeste will be in touch." Ava stepped back into the corridor, feeling as if she'd stepped into an alternate reality. The same man who belittled her in public now offered to uplift her life in ways she never dreamed possible. The question was, could she truly trust him? That evening, Ava sat at the small kitchen table in her apartment, her mother across from her. The overhead light buzzed faintly, casting warm shadows on the walls. On the table lay the brochure Celeste had handed her, outlining a potential philanthropic program sponsored by Richard Barrow. Isabella's eyes widened as she read the bullet points. "He's offering to pay for my treatments and your education." Just like that. Ava nodded, swirling a glass of water in her hands. "That's what he said. He wants to do some kind of philanthropic initiative. Said my story might inspire others. It feels too good to be true. Isabella set the brochure down, placing a hand on her daughter's. Mija, you've been working so hard, sacrificing so much for me. This could be a blessing. Eva hesitated, tears pricking her eyes. I'm afraid it's a trick. This is the same man who humiliated me in the cafe. Why the sudden change of heart? Isabella sighed. Sometimes people have a wake-up call. Maybe his conscience finally caught up with him. Eva bit her lip. Or maybe he's doing damage control. I saw online he has a reputation for being cutthroat. Possibly he wants a PR boost. They sat in reflective silence. The clock ticked softly in the background. Eventually, Isabella gave a small smile. Even if it is for PR, does it matter if it helps us? We have so many bills, Eva, and you have dreams that deserve a chance. A lump formed in Eva's throat. Her mother was right. She did have dreams like finishing college, maybe owning a bakery or a small cafe one day. She'd always toyed with the idea of starting her own business, but money had been a cruel barrier. I just worry about the cost, Eva whispered. Not financially, but emotionally. The arrangement might require me to be in the spotlight to collaborate with him somehow. I'm not sure I can stomach being around a man like that. Isabella's gaze was gentle. You're strong, Eva. You survived his hurtful words. Maybe this is your chance to show him and the world what dignity really looks like. The next day, Eva confided in Sergio during a break at the cafe. He leaned against a counter, arms crossed. I get why you're uneasy, he said, nodding thoughtfully. But maybe this is fate handing you an opportunity. Fate, Eva echoed with a wry smile. Or a trap. Sergio shrugged. Sometimes life doesn't offer neat solutions. You have to decide if the risks are worth the reward. That evening, Eva found herself at her computer, researching everything she could about Richard Barrow. Reports of ruthless takeovers, employees laid off, controversies about his environmental policies. But there was also mention of large donations to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He was philanthropic, at least on paper. After hours of deliberation, she emailed Celeste, stating she was open to further discussion under the condition that she'd have autonomy over how to use the funds. She also insisted on a clause protecting her privacy. She didn't want to be exploited for a publicity stunt. Within an hour, a reply came. Mr. Barrow agrees to your conditions. Let's schedule a formal meeting. Eva stared at the screen. Heart pounding. She was on the brink of entering a world far beyond her comfort zone. Yet behind her apprehension, a flicker of excitement glowed. Maybe, just maybe, this was the key to unlocking a future she'd only dared to imagine. Days later, Eva found herself once again in Brio Vision's impressive lobby. But this time, she wasn't alone. A small camera crew was positioned near the elevators, their equipment piled neatly in cases. Eva felt a jolt of anxiety. She'd expected a straightforward contract signing, not an entire production. Celeste Monroe greeted her with a polite nod and ushered her into a spacious conference room. Inside, Richard Barrow stood by a long mahogany table flanked by his PR director, a poised woman named Nadine Cross. Several camera operators were setting up tripods and reflectors, the hum of electronic equipment filling the air. Eva paused at the threshold, suddenly very aware of her simple blouse and skirt. What is all this? Nadine stepped forward, offering a handshake. Ms. Delgado. Hello. I'm Nadine Cross. We're documenting the launch of Mr. Barrow's philanthropic program. We've invited a small media crew to record the moment for a short feature. Nothing invasive, I promise." Ava's cheeks warmed with a mix of discomfort and apprehension. She glanced at Richard, who cleared his throat. "I should have mentioned the cameras," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "But I want to highlight your journey to inspire others, as I mentioned before." "We'll respect your boundaries." She swallowed, mindful of the conditions she had set in her email about privacy. Nadine must have noticed her reluctance, because she quickly added, "We'll only record what you're comfortable with. You can review any final cuts before they go public." With a slight nod, Ava allowed herself to be guided into the room. Celeste handed her a folder containing the contract, and they settled around the table. Richard, adopting a more formal tone, began outlining the deal. 1. A scholarship fund to cover any college or trade school tuition up to a certain cap. 2. Medical expenses for Ava's mother, including specialist appointments, treatments, and hospital stays. 3. An optional small business grant should Ava decide to pursue a startup in the future. 4. In exchange, Ava would allow limited documentation of her progress, along with periodic check-ins. Ava flipped through the pages, her heart racing. The numbers were staggering. She glimpsed the line item for her mother's health care. The sum was more than she could earn in 5 years at the cafe. Nadine's camera crew lingered on the periphery, capturing B-roll footage, while trying not to intrude too obviously. Celeste pointed out some clauses about timeline and deliverables, and Ava noted that she'd have to occasionally participate in short interviews or public appearances. At last, she looked up at Richard. His gaze was steady, but there was a trace of tension around his eyes. "This is a huge commitment," she said softly. "Why are you doing this for me specifically?" He ran a hand through his neatly styled hair. "Because I see potential in you, and because I owe a debt to the universe for becoming such a callous person. Think of it as me trying to recalibrate." Ava studied him for a moment. She still wasn't entirely convinced of his sincerity, but something about his voice suggested genuine regret. Slowly, she signed her name on the dotted line. The cameras captured the moment, but Ava barely noticed them. A strange mix of triumph and uncertainty churned within her. She was about to step onto a path she'd never imagined, one paved by a man who'd once humiliated her in front of a crowded cafe. A small round of applause broke out from the staff in the room as she set the pen down. Ava forced a smile, thinking of her mother's relief. Regardless of Richard's motives, this contract was a lifeline. As the cameras continued rolling, she couldn't help but wonder, would this philanthropic journey truly change her life, or would it bind her even closer to the millionaire who once treated her like dirt? Over the next few weeks, Ava's life began to transform in ways she could never have predicted. True to the contract, Richard Barrow promptly arranged for Isabella to see top medical specialists. A private car picked them up from their humble apartment, driving them to a renowned clinic in Beverly Hills. There, Isabella underwent a series of tests and consultations that might have been impossible on Ava's old insurance plan. Ava watched with cautious relief as her mother's new treatment schedule was finalized. The doctors assured them that while Isabella's condition was serious, the combination of specialized therapies and medication would significantly improve her quality of life. Meanwhile, the scholarship fund gave Ava the option to enroll in evening classes at a community college, focusing on business and management, crucial skills if she ever intended to open her own cafe or bakery. She was hesitant at first. Juggling the demands of school, her mother's care, and part-time work at the Redwood Cafe felt daunting. but the chance to pursue a real education was too precious to pass up. Richard maintained a polite distance, though they met once a week, for brief check-ins documented by Nadine's camera crew. Ava never forgot the initial humiliation he'd subjected her to, but she tried to keep an open mind, reminding herself that people could change. During one of these check-ins, Ava arrived at the Brio Vision Tower to find Richard in a less formal setting. A conference room set up with a small spread of pastries and coffee. He looked almost approachable in his shirt sleeves, tie loosened. "Ms. Delgado," he greeted, extending a hand. "How's your mother doing?" Ava set down her bag. "She's responding well to the new treatments." "Thank you. That's good to hear." He gestured for her to sit. Nadine's camera crew was there, but the cameras remained off for the moment, giving them some privacy. Richard took a sip of coffee. "I wanted to let you know we're launching a pilot series of videos to highlight your journey. Nothing invasive, just short clips to encourage others who might apply to the program." Ava stiffened slightly. "I'm still not sure how comfortable I am sharing my personal life, especially about my mother's health." He nodded, choosing his words carefully. "You'll have final say on what details go public, but a certain degree of transparency is important for credibility, especially if we want more donors and partners to fund the expansion." She exhaled, trying to temper her anxiety. "I understand." A flicker of something akin to genuine concern crossed his face. "If it helps, Nadine can show you sample edits before anything is released." Ava hesitated, searching his expression. She realized he was attempting to be considerate, an odd reversal from the man who once barked at her over spilled coffee. "All right," she agreed quietly. That day, they filmed a short segment where Ava talked about her dreams of one day owning a cafe. She described her mother's condition in broad strokes, avoiding specifics about her finances. It felt nerve-wracking to be in front of a camera, but Richard's presence was oddly reassuring. After the filming wrapped, he handed her a small folder of information on local business courses. "For when you're ready," he said simply. Ava paused, then mustered a small smile. "Thank you." Walking away, she couldn't deny that her life was improving dramatically. Yet an unsettling thought lingered. Why do I still sense a cloud looming overhead? Perhaps it was the knowledge that her good fortune hinged on the whims of a man who once seemed so cruel. As she exited into the bright sunshine, she resolved to stay vigilant. She appreciated the help, but trust was something she couldn't give freely. If Richard Barrow had truly changed, she'd see it in his actions over time. Until then, she'd keep her guard firmly in place. Life settled into a new routine for Ava: weekday mornings at the Redwood Cafe, afternoons in her business classes, and evenings assisting her mother or studying. Though she was busy, she felt a sense of purpose and hope. She even began drafting a business plan for a small bakery, indulging in dreams of creating artisan pastries and coffee experiences that brought people joy, minus the arrogance she'd so often encountered. Yet beneath the optimistic surface, trouble brewed. Online gossip columns began posting speculations about Richard Barrow's sudden philanthropic pivot. Articles questioned whether this was a ruse to rehabilitate his image ahead of rumored legal battles. Some hinted that he was grooming Ava as a spokesperson for a fake philanthropic program. When Ava stumbled upon these headlines, her stomach twisted. She'd never wanted the spotlight, let alone to be a pawn in a corporate PR game. She felt torn. On one hand, she couldn't deny the real benefits: her mother's improved health, her own education. On the other, the scathing rumors cast a shadow on the sincerity of the entire endeavor. One evening, while reviewing her business course materials, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Watch your back." Barrow isn't who he seems. A chill ran through her. She tried calling back, but the number was disconnected. Disturbed, she set her phone aside, telling herself it was a prank, yet worry gnawed at her. Soon after, Nadine scheduled another filming session. This time, Ava insisted they record it at the Redwood Cafe, wanting to show her roots and not always be dwarfed by Brio Vision's grandeur. Richard agreed, but he didn't attend in person, citing back-to-back meetings. The filming went smoothly. Patrons recognized Ava and offered supportive words. Sergio even shared a heartfelt cameo about Ava's work ethic, earning smiles from the camera crew. Yet an undercurrent of disappointment tugged at Ava. A tiny part of her had hoped Richard would show that he might see her world firsthand. Days later, she got a call from Nadine with an urgent tone. "Ava, I need you to come to the Brio Vision building tomorrow morning. We have a situation." When Ava arrived, she was whisked into a conference room where Richard, Celeste, and Nadine were already seated. The atmosphere was tense. On the table lay a stack of printouts, online articles, and message boards full of accusations. Richard's jaw was tight. "Someone is claiming our philanthropic program is a cover for money laundering. They say we're funneling funds through shell charities, that you're just an actress." Ava's face blanched. "What? That's absurd. I'm not an actress and there's no money laundering, at least not that I know of." Nadine rubbed her temples. "The rumor mill is out of control. Sponsors are getting skittish." Celeste spread out more documents, questionable financial transactions, suspicious deposit schedules. Some have pointed out unusual spikes in certain accounts tied to Brio Vision's philanthropic arm. "We're trying to trace the source." Ava looked at Richard, panic rising. "You're not laundering money, are you?" He met her gaze, face grim. "No. But someone in my organization might be. We have to get to the bottom of this before it destroys the program, and your reputation along with it." Ava sank into a chair, her mind reeling. The initiative that had given her a lifeline now stood on shaky ground, threatened by behind-the-scenes machinations. If these allegations proved damaging, everything, her mother's treatments, her college tuition, her bakery, dream, could crumble. Suddenly, the path once illuminated by hope felt darkened by a looming shadow. The question now was whether Richard Barrow and Ava herself had the resolve to fight whatever storm was brewing within Brio Vision's empire. Over the next week, Ava was pulled into a whirlwind of damage control efforts. She found herself in meetings with lawyers, accountants, and PR specialists, all trying to piece together the source of the suspicious transactions. The constant swirl of rumors and stress threatened to overwhelm her, yet she kept reminding herself that backing out now would jeopardize her mother's health and her own future. Richard seemed uncharacteristically subdued. Gone was the arrogant air that had once defined him. Instead, he paced hallways, barked out orders to subordinates, and pored over spreadsheets determined to prove his innocence. One night, well after normal office hours, Ava wandered into the deserted 34th floor of Brio Vision headquarters. She found a single office light still on Richard's. Through the glass walls, she saw him hunched over his desk, tie-loosened hair disheveled. She hesitated, but decided to knock softly. "Mr. Barrow." He looked up, dark circles under his eyes. "Ava," he said, his voice rough with fatigue. "I didn't realize you were still here." She stepped inside, offering a timid smile. "I was working with Nadine on a statement for the press. She's gone home now. Thought I'd check on you." He sighed, running a hand over his face. I'm not going to lie, this is bad. We've uncovered several unauthorized wire transfers, funneling money through the philanthropic account. The amounts coincide with when we launched your program. Ava's heart sank. Does that mean the funds for my mother's treatment are tied to? Richard shook his head firmly. No. Your funds are legitimate. The dirty transfers piggybacked on the public goodwill around your case, using it as camouflage. That's why we've been accused of money laundering. Someone in my company took advantage of the new philanthropic shell to move money. Her chest tightened. Do you have any idea who it is? He clenched his jaw. We're narrowing it down. My CFO is investigating. There's a suspect, one of our senior VPs, who has a reputation for shady deals. But we need proof. Ava felt a wave of empathy. Despite everything she realized, Richard was genuinely distraught, not just about his own reputation, but about the program's credibility and her well-being. She ventured closer to his desk. Is there anything I can do? He let out a bitter laugh. I should be the one helping you, not the other way around. She tentatively placed a hand on the stack of files. We're in this together now, right? This program was supposed to help me, and it still can. If there's something I can do, maybe talk to people or gather statements, let me know. For a moment his gaze softened. I appreciate that. You've been dragged into a corporate scandal through no fault of your own, yet you're still willing to help. Ava shrugged, though her heart fluttered with a strange warmth. I'm not exactly powerless, you know. I have a stake in this. And a voice. He nodded slowly. All right, let's fight this together. I promise I'll see this through, even if it means cleaning house at Brio Vision. As she left his office, Ava realized how far they'd come from that day in the cafe. Two strangers bound by a spilled coffee incident. Now they were allies in a high-stakes battle against hidden corruption. Whether they'd emerge victorious remained to be seen. But for the first time, Ava felt a sense of camaraderie with Richard, a fragile partnership that could either mend their past or lead them into even darker entanglements. The next few days blurred into a frenzy of activity. As public suspicion grew, Richard Barrow and his core team, including Celeste and the CFO, undertook an exhaustive audit of Brio Vision's financial records. Nadine scrambled to manage the PR fallout, issuing carefully worded press releases emphasizing that the philanthropic program and Ava's story were genuine. Meanwhile, the Redwood Cafe felt the ripple effects. Journalists and bloggers began frequenting the place, hoping to snag an off-the-cuff remark from Ava or Sergio. Some customers took pictures of the booth where the spilled coffee incident occurred, while others whispered conspiratorially in the corner. Sergio pulled Ava aside one morning as she was refilling salt shakers. All these cameras make me nervous, he admitted. I don't like seeing you hounded. Ava forced a small smile. I'm okay, Sergio. It's just for a while. Hopefully, once the real culprits are found, all this will die down. Yet the tension was undeniable. After her shift, she rushed to the Brio Vision Tower where she joined Celeste and the CFO in an office piled high with documents. They combed through records line by line, cross-referencing each suspicious transfer. Aha, the CFO muttered at one point, pointing to a spreadsheet. These wire transfers to Cayman accounts coincide with approvals from the senior VP of International Partnerships, a guy named Bryce Wentworth. Richard, who had been reviewing a separate stack of files, looked up sharply. Wentworth, I had my suspicions. He's always pushing for expansions in questionable markets. Celeste highlighted lines in the document. It appears he used the philanthropic shell to funnel funds offshore. On paper, it looks like donations to smaller charities, but the final accounts trace back to him. Ava exhaled relief and dread twisting together. Finally, a concrete lead. But confronting a powerful VP like Wentworth wouldn't be simple. That night, the team strategized in a private meeting. The plan: gather undeniable evidence, then confront Wentworth with a legal strategy in place. If he refused to cooperate, they'd hand everything to law enforcement. Ava listened quietly, heart pounding. This was a world she'd never imagined: financial crime, corporate espionage, high-stakes negotiations. But she'd grown invested in exposing the truth. If the philanthropic program was tarnished, many others like her would lose out on the help they desperately needed. Eventually, Richard walked Ava to the lobby where a driver waited to take her home. Under the bright fluorescent lights, he paused, turning to face her. "I'm sorry you got pulled into this mess," he said in a low voice. "But I'm glad you're here." She searched his eyes, seeing genuine sincerity. "Me too," she admitted softly. "I don't want all your talk about helping people to go to waste because of someone else's greed." He gave a tight nod. "Tomorrow, we confront Wentworth. With any luck, we'll get him to confess or at least resign quietly. Then we can salvage the program." Ava stepped into the waiting car, her mind swirling. As the city lights flashed by on the drive home, she braced herself for the confrontation that would determine the program's fate, and possibly her own future. The clock was ticking, and everything hinged on what happened next. At 9 the next morning, Richard, Barrow, Celeste, Ava, and the CFO quietly gathered in a sleek conference room on the 35th floor of Brio Vision. They'd chosen a discreet location away from prying eyes and staff gossip for the showdown with Bryce Wentworth. Wentworth arrived in a crisp suit and a confident stride that bordered on arrogance. He arched an eyebrow at the group. "Quite an audience for an early meeting. Care to enlighten me?" Richard wasted no time. "Bryce, we have evidence you've been siphoning company funds through the philanthropic program. Wire transfers to offshore accounts traced back to you." Wentworth's smile faltered. He shot a daggered glance at Celeste and the CFO, then at Ava as though her presence was a personal affront. "That's a serious accusation. You'd better have proof." Celeste slid a folder across the table. "Bank statements, digital footprints, authorizations from your login. We have it all." Wentworth's face hardened as he skimmed the documents. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, voice taut. "Maybe a mistake by the finance department." Richard slammed a palm on the table. "Don't insult our intelligence. You use the philanthropic arm to launder money. In doing so, you jeopardized not only my company, but also Miss Delgado's future and the well-being of every genuine beneficiary." Ava stiffened at his words. She felt a surge of anger at the man who nearly derailed her mother's health care and her own dreams. "Mr. Wentworth," she said evenly, "your actions could have ruined countless lives." Wentworth sneered. "Don't lecture me, Waitress." "You don't belong here." Before Ava could retort, Celeste's voice cut through the tension. "We have enough evidence to press charges, but Mr. Barrow is willing to offer you a choice." She slid a second folder forward. "Resignation letters and a confession of wrongdoing ensuring you cooperate with any investigation. In return, we won't publicly name you yet. You can walk away quietly." Wentworth eyed the folder warily, weighing his options. If he resisted, the scandal would go public and he'd face criminal charges. If he signed, he might salvage a shred of reputation. though it would be tainted by whispers of corruption. He finally let out a defeated breath. Fine. Grabbing a pen, he scribbled his signature on the documents. I'll resign. But mark my words, Barrow. You can't run this company without sharks like me. Your new philanthropic buddy act won't save you in the real world. Richard's expression was icy. I'd rather run a company on integrity than profit from deceit. Ava watched as Wentworth stormed out the door, slamming behind him. A heavy silence followed. Then slowly, Celeste exhaled with relief. That was tense. The CFO nodded. I'll start the official inquiry process and ensure the philanthropic accounts are fully audited. Richard turned to Ava. Looks like we can move forward now, legitimately. The allegations should clear once we show the world what we've found. She mustered a small smile, heart still pounding. I'm glad. It would have crushed me to see this program end because of one man's greed. As they left the conference room, Nadine and her camera crew were waiting in the hallway, hoping to capture a statement. For once, Richard looked poised, not for a PR stunt, but as someone genuinely proud of doing the right thing. He glanced at Ava silently, asking if she was willing to address the camera. She gave a nod, stepping forward. Facing the camera lens, she spoke firmly. Today, BrioVision took a stand against corruption. The philanthropic program that changed my life was almost destroyed by someone who saw it as a tool for personal gain. But we fought back, and we're here to prove that integrity can prevail. Richard joined her voice steady. We remain committed to helping people like Ava. Nothing and no one will stop us from fulfilling that promise. In that moment, under the glare of camera lights, Ava felt a swell of hope. She'd come a long way from the waitress humiliated over spilled coffee. Now she stood beside a millionaire who had once been her worst tormentor, united in a cause bigger than either of them. The path forward still held uncertainty, but they had taken a crucial step, reclaiming the program's mission and restoring faith in their shared journey. As for what came next, only time would tell. But at least now, they would face it together. Thank you so much for watching this uplifting yet tumultuous journey. We began with a single spilled cup of coffee that became the catalyst for a life-changing confrontation between Ava Delgado and Richard Barrow. From public humiliation to unexpected philanthropy, we've seen how forgiveness, resilience, and courage can transform even the darkest circumstances. Ava's determination to rise above her humble beginnings and Richard's quest to atone for his arrogance ultimately led them to expose corruption and forge a new path toward genuine hope. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue telling powerful stories that highlight human triumph and the possibility of redemption. Let us know in the comments what you think about Ava's choice and whether you believe in second chances. Hit that notification bell so you'll never miss a new video, and we'll see you soon with another inspiring tale.